Welcome, everyone, to Rooted in Justice, addressing natural hair discrimination and health impacts on women and girls of African descent, a side event in conjunction with the fourth session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, which will be held in person next week in New York City at the United Nations headquarters. I am Wendy Green, professor of law and director of the Center for Law Policy and Social Action at Drexel University Thomas R. Klein School of Law in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am also a legal architect of the Federal Crown Act and an expert for parallel civil rights litigation and legislation throughout the United States and France. I am also the founder of the hashtag Free the Hair movement, which seeks to ensure that African descendants can rock their hair freely and freely rock their hair according to their needs and desires through policy, legal, social, and personal change. Also joined with us today as my co-moderator is the incredible Natasha Gaspard.
Hi, I'm Natasha Gaspard. I'm an Emmy Award-winning television producer and founder and chief empowerment officer of Main Moves Media Incorporated, an influential platform dedicated to celebrating natural hair and beauty wellness for Black women. So with over a decade of experience in the natural hair industry, I have worked with hair care professionals and beauty brands and advocates to produce impactful video series, panel discussions, and community workshops. My mission is to foster meaningful conversations using natural hair as the gateway to self-love, cultural identity, and self-expression. I am also the co-founder of the Natural Hairstyle and Braid Coalition based in New York City, and our mission is to elevate the art and science of natural hair care through education and legislation.
Natasha Gaspard and I. Yay.
Thank you.
Hand claps. Hand claps for everybody in snaps. Yes.
Yeah.
Natasha and I are delighted to serve as co-moderators of our conversation with this international slate of advocates and experts who are combating the harms of hair discrimination affecting African descendant women and girls in the United States and abroad. In December 2023, during the first session of the Permanent Forum at the UN headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, I addressed this multinational group of civil society and official representatives, calling on the United Nations to deliver greater public education, law, and policy to combat the harms of race-based hair discrimination affecting African descendants worldwide. In doing so, I express that how we as African descendants wear our hair is not an inconsequential aesthetic choice, but rather it is a consequential matter affecting our quality of life, livelihoods, and lifespan. Therefore, as I always say, if you care about Black women's and girls' health, you have to care about our hair. Over the next 90 minutes, we will explore the intersection of natural hair discrimination and the health-related harms of hair products and innovations targeting women and girls of African descent. Panelists will discuss groundbreaking research linking chemical relaxer use to increased cancer risk, cancer-causing materials in braiding hair, and the epidemic of hair loss. We will examine the emotional, economic, physical, and psychological effects of these issues, while highlighting strategies for legal, policy, and collective action. By centering the lived experiences and health of Black women and girls, this discussion aims to foster advocacy, awareness, and concrete recommendations for systemic change. We will also be exploring solutions to these topics, such as passing the Afro hair law in the United States, in the UK, and in France. We will first hear from our incredible panelists and attendees, and attendees are free to pose questions using the Q&A function, which we will address at the end of the program, hopefully if time permits. But first, Natasha will introduce our panelists and we'll get the conversation started.
Okay, thank you, Professor Wendy. So, hair discrimination is a harmful legacy of the past, right? Rooted in ignorance and misunderstanding. For far too long, these false beliefs have shaped how society perceives and how we at times perceive ourselves. But make no mistake, our hair is perfect exactly as it is. This conversation is not about dwelling in the harm, it's about reclaiming our power. It's about examining the social, political, mental, and emotional consequences of allowing others to define our worth and about celebrating the individuals who said no more, right? Who envisioned a new reality and took bold steps to create it. You'll hear from trailblazers, artists, scholars, advocates, and change makers who have crafted legislation, challenged institutions, and sparked global movements. Because transformation begins with awareness, with a shift in consciousness. And for people of African descent, this shift is our most powerful tool in creating lasting and liberating change. So we hope that you leave today not only more informed, but more inspired, knowing that a new future is not only possible, it's already being shaped by us, for us, and with love at the root. So today, in conversation with Professor Green and I, we have the following panelists, okay? So to talk about the health impacts of hair discrimination and to offer some solutions and models, we have our first guest, Dr. Achima Ose-Tutu. She is a board-certified dermatologist who will share insights on the scalp and hair loss issues that disproportionately affect Black women, the importance of culturally competent care, and how her work, including docsforhair.com and Black Derm Directory, is helping connect our community to the right professionals. Also, in line with health implications for harmful hair products, we have Dr. Charlene Makita. She is an analytical chemist, clean beauty entrepreneur, and Afro hair advocate whose work bridges science, health, and justice. She'll speak on the toxic ingredients found in hair products marketed to Black women and girls, her research on natural alternatives like moringa, and her global advocacy to protect communities through legislative reform and education. And talking about the psychological impact of natural hair discrimination, we have Dr. Afia Mbalashaka, who's a clinical psychologist and founder of psychotherapy, a groundbreaking approach that uses Black hair culture as a bridge to mental health care. She'll share how beauty spaces can become healing spaces and how hair can be a powerful tool for emotional wellness and cultural affirmation. And in speaking about empowering Black girls through collective action and personal agency, we have Dr. Patricia O'Brien Richardson. She's a public health scholar and founder of Move It Nation. We will explore how hair functions as a powerful lens for understanding systemic inequalities and how it can be used as a tool for public health advocacy, cultural affirmation, and social justice, especially for Black girls and women. And then we're going to shift to policy, legal, and advocacy solutions, talking about grassroots and community-led advocacy efforts with Michelle DeLeon of World Afro Day. Michelle DeLeon is the visionary founder and CEO of World Afro Day, based in the United Kingdom. And today she'll share how a joyful moment with her daughter inspired a global movement that merges media, activism, and research to drive systemic change and end hair discrimination worldwide. Very excited to have her. Also, we have Guylaine Conquette. She is a French artist and activist whose personal natural hair journey sparked a powerful movement that led to France's historic national law against hair discrimination. And today she'll share how her art, advocacy, and fight for health justice continue to challenge stigma and celebrate the beauty of Black identity worldwide. And then, of course, you have Professor Wendy Green, Professor of Law and the Director of Center for Law Policy and Social Action at Drexel University Klein School of Law. She'll be speaking a little bit about the legislation here in the US and her advocacy work that has spanned the globe. And I'll be talking a little bit about the role of media and influencers in shifting narratives, as well as a little bit about natural hair care licensing a little later on. And then we'll open it up to interactive Q&A and then closing remarks.
Dr. Makita, Dr. Charlene, hi, how are you?
Hi, everyone.
Great, great, great. So we're so happy to have you with us. And just to talk a bit again about your work, you've done extensive work exposing the harmful ingredients in products marketed to African descendant women and girls. What are some of the most dangerous chemicals that consumers should be aware of? And why is regulation so critically important in this space?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to be here today. It's such a valuable topic. And we know that there is value in focusing in on the health of Black women and children. It was always a sideline topic, but now the momentum is gaining traction. And of course, platforms such as these is a perfect way to highlight these issues as it relates to the health of Black women and children. highlighting health issues in women and children, especially Black women and children, is not just an academic or advocacy interest for me. It is very personal and an extreme urgent cause. And I say it's personal only because the premise of me starting my hair care brand, Natural Aura, actually stemmed from supplying products that were safe to use for Afro-textured men and women. Back then, there weren't a lot of products on the market that catered to that. But now, of course, we're spoiled for choice. But ultimately, that was the premise of me creating Natural Aura. And in the past, health hazards that are associated with some of products that are marketed towards Black women and children, these issues were definitely under-researched, they were underreported, and under-addressed in the mainstream health discourse as well as mainstream media. But now we do see a resurgence of research as well as the mainstream media picking up on these important topics. So it definitely, platforms such as these are really good in highlighting why it's important to know of all these health hazards that are affecting us as Black women and children. So if we start at marketing alone, there are still dangerous hair products that are marketed towards Black women and children. And Black women who spend more on hair products than any other group, we are 4 to 9 times more exposed to chemicals because we buy as many products compared to the other races. And I think in South Africa alone, Black consumers spend up to 6 times more on our hair products compared to our white counterparts. And the products that are marketed towards us, according to a study from the Environmental Working Group, they actually tested 4,011 products that were marketed toward Black women. And about 1 in 20 ranked as highly hazardous, 1 in 20. That is a very, very high statistic. And the products that are marketed towards us, because we are high consumers of these products contain parabens, they contain phthalates, and other chemicals that are known to be endocrine disruptors. And because 50% of products are marketed towards Black women compared to 7% of white women, we have the risk of developing preterm delivery, fibroids, malignancy such as ovarian cancer, as well as uterine cancer by using such products. As you can see, this is definitely alarming and the disparities exist in product safety. And this just highlights the long-standing disproportion in consumer protection as well as public health policy. And because us as Black women some have used straighteners such as relaxers or other methods of straightening our hair, and because they contain these dangerous products, the long-term use of this is definitely higher compared to white women. I mean, I remember just looking at pictures when I was younger. I had straight hair. Sorry, Mom. I know she's watching. It's just lack of knowledge at the end of the day, but I had straight hair. So you can imagine over time, just the chemical effects or the toxins that are in my body because I was exposed to relaxers at such a young age. And it's not just about the health hazards associated with it. When we're actually applying this on our children's scalp, the burning, the irritation also have long-term effects. And as I mentioned, this can be linked to uterine fibroids in the long term, preterm birth, multiple cancers that are associated and found in Black women. Now, the European Union does regulate about 1,300 ingredients for use in cosmetics, but research has actually found that the hair relaxers that are marketed toward children actually contain 5 chemicals that are prohibited in the EU. 5 chemicals. So no children of any other racial group are exposed to these strains of chemicals for cosmetic reasons. And this just basically highlights the lack of protection afforded to us as Black women and children, the racial discrimination in the Black industry, and ultimately, chemical relaxers for children should definitely not exist. The Consumer Report this year published and tested certain products of synthetic hair toward Black consumers. And the hair extension and the wig market for Black consumers also goes unregulated. In fact, they actually found that these synthetic products actually contain carcinogens. So when I started my natural hair journey, I was so excited. The knowledge behind the natural hair movement, the ingredient list, I was looking at products and just highlighting, okay, I can't use this, I can't use that. And of course, the protective styling that associated with the natural hair movement, I was so excited to get into that. But ultimately, what is deemed as a protective style now is posing to be extremely, extremely dangerous. In fact, the hairstyle that is supposed to be protecting us is actually harming us. And we're wearing these protective styles months at a time. When you indulge in unhealthy food, you know that it's unhealthy. You know that indulging is going to harm you. Or if you smoke, there's research, or on the box, it tells you not to smoke. And these are the harmful effects. But putting braids on our hair, it's not regulated. There aren't compounds that are telling us that it's harmful. There aren't signs and labels that are telling us that these synthetic hairs and wigs actually have products that are harmful to us. And children as little as 1 year old are exposed to these products. So there is definitely a need to regulate more of our products, and especially synthetic hair that is exposed to us as Black women as well as Black children. And this is just from a consumer point of view. Can you imagine from the hairstylists that are actually using this on a day-to-day basis? The high levels of exposure that they're experiencing as well is extremely, extremely harmful. So this just shows that, one, we need to stop buying synthetic hair and probably invest in more biodegradable products that will probably be better for our health. And ultimately, in terms of sustainability, it'll be better for the planet as well.
Thank you so much for opening up this conversation with that really important information about the harms of the products that we are commonly using. And as you mentioned, ironically, commonly using under the auspices of protecting ourselves, but may in fact be harming ourselves. Can you tell us a little bit about how your scientific and advocacy work, particularly through World Afro Day and your own clean beauty brand, really aim to empower consumers and influence systemic change in the beauty industry so that hopefully we are using products that are not going to be harmful, but that will not be harmful to us? How have you gone about merging, your background into your advocacy?
Well, I will start by saying just volunteering as part of World Afro Day has definitely opened doors, and working with Michelle and as well as the World Afro Day team has definitely increased my advocacy and just understanding how severe these issues are. And before I get into my work, I definitely believe that there's topics to address just as it relates to regulation. We do need better consumer health protection. I do believe that regulations need to be strengthened to ban or restrict the toxic chemicals that are used, such as parabens and phthalates, in hair relaxers and texturizers and synthetic hair products. And I do believe that the vulnerability of children needs to be protected as well. We need to ensure that products that are marketed towards children that are harmful are banned altogether. And in addition to that, we do need safety assessments that are developed when there are products that are marketed towards children as well. Just in terms of my advocacy, as I mentioned, working with World Afro Day and the team has definitely been enlightening. And I'm advocating for systemic changes at the end of the day. This is through legal reforms as well as policy changes. And a key part of my mission is to help implement changes in South Africa as well to protect against Afro hair discrimination. And while we work to amend the Equality Act in the UK, I do believe that this is a global issue that requires action on all fronts, and to ensure that we're not reinventing the wheel. So the work that's been done with Michelle with the Equality Act, or Ghislaine with the French law, or yourself with the Crown Act, it's important that we take the methods that are implemented, passing the law and taking it into South Africa as well. We do need data that I think is missing that highlights the systemic biases that certain groups experience. And I do believe that we need advocacy groups, we need legal coalitions, we need public health experts, civil society groups, influencers that are helping to build visibility and online support to push this narrative as well. So if anyone on the call is interested in passing this law in South Africa or Africa, please feel free to contact me.
Wonderful. And I hope there will be some who will answer your call to action. So next we'll hear from Dr. Ositutu and her work in terms of specializing in hair loss, and again, bringing about some extra attention to the common scalp and hair loss issues that are disproportionately affecting Black women. So many Black women experience hair loss and scalp conditions, but may not know where to turn for help. Can you break down some of the common causes and what steps women can take to protect and restore their hair health? And again, welcome, Dr. Ositutu.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. It's wonderful to be here. I'm very honored to be amongst you, very wonderful, powerful women. So, yeah, hair loss is an epidemic in the Black community and actually globally amongst all types of people. The main issues and conditions that we see in women of African descent are, number one, centrifugal cicatricial alopecia, which is in the type of inflammatory scarring alopecia. The main immune cell type that we see in that disease is called a lymphocyte. So it's a lymphocytic cicatricial alopecia. We also see a lot of seborrheic dermatitis, which is dandruff, and then also traction alopecia due to various hairstyling practices. So those are the main ones that we see. Of course, common hair loss conditions include androgenic alopecia, which is a type of hair loss that you see with hormonal dysregulation on the scalp and as we get a little bit older.
And can, with respect to your journey into dermatology and hair loss specialization, what was influencing, or what personally was influencing this path that you decided to take? And can you share a little bit about your story and how it shaped your mission to connect Black women with dermatologists who truly understand their hair?
Absolutely. So I have a cousin who is, a sister to me. I'm from Ghana, so cousins are sisters, aunts are moms, right? And she developed hair loss when we were in our 20s. And as I went into dermatology residency, I decided at the end of it that I wanted to get more interested in hair. When I graduated, I started my process of learning, going to all the conferences, and every time I learned more, interestingly, her hair loss progressed because she was also in different stages of her life. As I know now, she developed this CCCA that I'm talking to you about and continued to engage in different hair care practices that I think probably made things worse. At the time, she was also going through a very stressful time in her life, going through different forms of higher education, was not living in the country, and initially was getting the care that she needed and ended up unfortunately not being able to get the care that she needed. So her hair loss progressed significantly. So I learned everything really for her. So each and every single time I see a patient, I'm really looking at her, all of the things that we've talked about over the years, the sadness, the depression, how to navigate social interactions, how she navigates romantic interactions. It's not just you have a disease and I'm giving you medication. It's really the person in total and how they see themselves with their disease. And, we can talk a lot about all the psychosocial issues that go along with making your hair do things that it's not supposed to do and how it adds to your disease itself. So it's really a holistic approach to the patient. I also found that over the years, patients, whether they move or go to other places, are also looking for dermatologists, number one, who look like them. There have been studies to show that having a doctor who's concordant to you produces better health outcomes. So this is why I decided to create blackdermdirectory.com. So this lists all the Black dermatologists around the world. So it's not to say that just because you are not a Black dermatologist that you cannot treat Black patients. That's very silly, right? Only 3% of the dermatologists in the United States are Black. But sometimes patients go to places and they don't get culturally competent care. And it's a deterrent, right? They see a doctor, the doctor, quote unquote, doesn't understand them, and then they don't go back again. They don't see anybody else. And by the time you see them or somebody else sees them, their condition, and for me, their hair loss condition is 10 times worse. And I mean, I see the pictures all the time. And there are plenty of my colleagues who are white and white and Asian and all other types of ethnicities who, give really, really great care. They're very culturally competent. So it's not to sort of diminish those efforts, but it's just to give people an option. I also created a directory called Docs for Hair, which basically lists the dermatologists who really subspecialize in hair loss, right? Whether they be black, white, or other. And just like every doctor has a little bit of a subspecialty, you know, some derms are really good at doing filler or they focus on filler and laser. I just highlighted the derms who really emphasize their practice on hair loss.
That's been such a great resource and relief for so many, right? Because often many of us Black women and girls don't see Black dermatologists.
That's
And maybe
right. Yes.
they even exist, and more
Right.
specifically, know that they exist to really get to the heart of this issue that is plaguing so many of us as it relates to our hair and our hair health. And so, one last thing, what are some of the steps in your experience that women and girls can take to protect and restore their hair health and to maintain hair health, even starting at early ages? What are just in your experience some things that people might be able to do? Probably you might say first, go to a dermatologist.
Well, I think the number one thing to do is to love yourself. In talking to patients, I find that we try to contort our hair in ways that it naturally was not meant to go. And besides, you know, let's not say that only grooming practices cause hair loss conditions, because that's not true, right? There are actually organic, systemic, autoimmune, autoinflammatory scalp diseases, right? However, grooming practices can exacerbate these things. And these are often due to, you know, tight braids. These are due to, you know, potentially wearing wigs. And also trying to create styles that manipulate the hairs in ways that the hair just doesn't like. I also think that it's important for people to listen to their scalp and their hair. If you do a hairstyle and your hair does not like it, vis-a-vis pain, irritation, thinning, maybe a little bit, maybe a temporary bald patch. What we do often as Black women is push it. Oh, okay, you know, I saw it, but I'm gonna do it again because it looked good or it lasts a really long time. If we just listened to our hair and just did not engage in those things again, just like if you were exposed to a substance and you had an allergy to it, and like peanuts, you decided, you know what, I'm not going to eat peanuts ever again. I think we should institute the same things with our hair, because our hair and our scalps are trying to tell us something.
So do not ignore the signs.
Not ignore the signs. Absolutely not. Yes.
Do not ignore the signs. Listen to your scalp and hair,
Yes.
and know that there are dermatologists who focus on our hair there.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
didn't mean to rhyme, but it just came out. That's so important. Thank you so much. You know, this is a great segue to talk with Dr. Afia as well, because you're talking about the psychological and emotional impact of hair loss, which oftentimes people are not thinking about, right? I know in the work that I do, I always try to illuminate, you know, what kind of stress that so many Black women and girls are experiencing when they're losing their hair for whatever the reasons may be. And those to me are what I call like the invisible harms of, you know, hair discrimination, the invisible harms of trying to conform to certain types of beauty standards. And as you mentioned, Dr. Ositutu, even just the invisible harms of trying to do things that are in tension with our natural hair growth, right? And our natural scalp conditions. So Dr. Afia, can you tell us a bit from your experience as a clinical psychologist, what are the psychological impacts of hair discrimination that Black women and girls are experiencing?
Well, thank you for having me, Natasha and Professor Wendy Green. But across the globe, Black women and girls face an often unseen battle, one that's deeply psychological and emotional, yet highly shared. Hair discrimination. And so from boardrooms to classrooms, from neighborhoods to online spaces, Black hair has been systematically stigmatized. And the impact is very deep. Hair discrimination impacts how we see ourselves. It erodes our self-esteem. It creates an internal conflict within ourselves, and it causes stress, hair stress, and also physical and emotional stress that lingers long after the moment has passed. In my research studies and studying the psychology of hair, some participants noticed that they still feel deep sense of shame, fear, sadness, and anger 50 years later from these hair discrimination moments. And for young girls in particular, it's even harder. They're learning that their natural beauty doesn't fit in, and that who they are isn't just, it's not good enough. And the messages they've received basically are either conform or face rejection.
Thank you so much for that. So when you have been talking with, women and girls who are experiencing the psychological impacts of hair discrimination, how do you see psychotherapy? That's your baby, psychotherapy, addressing this issue, and what impact do you hope that it will have in terms of transforming, transforming our minds and therefore transforming our experiences as we're navigating broader society and navigating the discrimination and the stereotypes and biases that are oftentimes affixed to our natural hair as we are doing so.
Mm-hmm. Yes, psychotherapy is my baby, and my art and my science. And so for people who don't know, psychotherapy is using hair as an entry point into mental health care. So primarily I train hair care professionals in how to have these mental health first aid moments, as well as training therapists to be able to enter the salon and barbershop space. And so I have so many visions for my baby of what can happen, but especially in addressing hair discrimination. So again, psychotherapy is a therapeutic approach to address these issues in meaningful ways by providing Black women in particular and Black girls to reclaim agency over their hair and identity. By integrating psychological support with discussions about hair, identity, and systemic oppression, psychotherapy offers a platform for healing and empowerment. So here's how psychotherapy can address hair discrimination. First, through self-acceptance, right? We can't do any other work until we accept ourselves. So psychotherapy can help individuals navigate the internal conflict between conforming to societal standards and embracing their natural hair by fostering an environment where Black women and girls can explore and celebrate their hair without shame. It can lead to increased self-acceptance and a stronger sense of self. Also, another way that psychotherapy can address hair discrimination concerns is challenging societal norms. So psychotherapy encourages individuals to critically examine the societal standards that perpetuate hair discrimination. And by addressing the very root of these issues, it can help participants understand that the problem lies not with their hair, but with the system that devalues it. And this process can promote social justice and resistance to discriminatory norms. Also, we can address hair trauma or aesthetic trauma and understand that this cultural and historical trauma associated with our hair can be addressed through a collective in terms of understanding our common wounds of living in this world in a Black body, and to be able to address the pathways for healing with community support. So having group therapy based in hair salons, and having people share their stories is an opportunity to validate feelings and to build this collective solidarity. Also, just thinking more in the long term, by addressing psychological impacts of hair discrimination and helping individuals reclaim their natural beauty, psychotherapy can have a broader impact where society can literally shift to our beauty and really challenge the harmful effects of hair discrimination. So ultimately, my baby psychotherapy can shift the narrative around Black hair, moving from shame and marginalization to one of pride, empowerment, and ultimately self-acceptance.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pia, for telling us so passionately about your baby, which I've just been witnessing from a distance, and just love to see it come to fruition. And I think, between all three of you thus far, and I'm sure Dr. Patty is going to lend in this direction as well, what is so key is about, getting to the root of these issues that we're experiencing and how to respond to it. I love the fact that you all have emphasized so much about self-love and self-acceptance that can lead to, really powerful acts of resistance and liberation. And so with Dr. Patty, thank you so much for being here. And y'all have to excuse me. I'm from the South, so I can't. So everybody's like a Miss Patty or a Dr. Patty. We say those names together. So,
Wow, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
yes, it is so wonderful to have you here as well. And I too, likewise, have been such a fan of all of the amazing work that you have been doing as well to uplift women and girls and hair justice and hair equality. So can you tell us a bit your research and your advocacy explore how hair intersects with health, identity, and inequality for women and girls of African descent, and how you see the work that you're doing as both a public health issue and a social justice issue, to the extent we can even disaggregate those, but how you see your work really advancing public health as well as social justice.
Absolutely. Well, first, I have to say how excited I am to be with all of you. I just have to put it out there. You all are my sheroes, the work that you've done. And I say that because, when I started this work in hair, researching hair, it was so long ago that I hardly could find any information about hair in the literature in terms of research. And so I am very excited that this is a topic. What I will say is that Black hair is a social justice issue because historically, Eurocentric beauty standards has led to discrimination and also a de-evaluation of Black hair and Black bodies. And so that we know now that discrimination also leads to, serious implications in terms of not just for social justice, but also for public health. I would say for social justice, it could lead to microaggressions and also even a lack of promotion, a lack of advancement in the workplace. And we see that, and that's why we need the Crown Act. But also in terms of public health, I was sharing that my initial connection to understanding and exploring hair among young girls and women started when I was an educator. And I was actually a teacher, proud New York City teacher. I noticed when I walked into gym class, because of course I was involved in health, I would notice the boys playing basketball, volleyball, every kind of activity out there. The girls were all sitting on the bleachers. They were just watching. They were not involved at all. And I saw this across all the different classes. And I remember speaking to the girls, well, why aren't you being active like the boys? The boys are out there playing. Why aren't you being involved? Why are you sitting on the bleachers? And they would say, oh, no, Miss Patty, this is before I had my PhD up. This is long ago. Oh, no, Miss Patty, I'm not going to get in and do gym. I don't do gym. That's a no-go. They would tell me, I don't do gym. And I would say, why? They would say, oh, no, I'm not going to mess up my hair. Are you kidding? And don't let it be picture day, because they would say, oh, no, it's picture day. I'm not getting involved with that. And so one of the things I learned was, this is different. This is interesting. Why is this the case? And I decided to make this a topic for my dissertation. One of the things I learned from speaking to young girls, middle school and high school girls, was it's speaking to your point about self-esteem and how it affects us in terms of education. You would be surprised to know how young girls are already feeling a negative experience about their hair. And one of the things that really shocked me, I'll never forget, was this young girl. She was 8 years old, and she was as young as 8 already feeling negative things and feelings about her hair. I asked them that day in my focus groups and interviews, what is it about your hair? Why do you feel like you can't participate in gym? And they literally told me, I heard this a lot. My mother told me that I cannot mess up my hair because it's so expensive. And just even finding out what it would cost for them. And I'm not just talking about straight hair. I'm speaking styled hair. It could be any style, even braids. And I think that, to the point of many of my esteemed co-panelists, I have to say, our children are very much influenced, as we are, by media, by celebrities, artists, musicians, singers, and they are just having a front row seat to what the media is seeing as a priority and who gets to be right in front of them. Sadly, also as a teacher, when you're looking over your students' work, I would notice how tight their braids were, very tight. sadly causing damage to their scalp. And I also noticed young girls doing whatever they could to look like their standard of beauty, not being able to afford the clip-ins or the weaves. So they would buy whatever cheap clips that they could clip into their hair, which again caused damage. And so I have seen young girls to the level of causing damage to their hair, to their scalp in the name of beauty. And I have also seen and heard young girls share with me how their own family members have sadly discouraged them. I will never forget one of the girls telling me when their mother was combing their hair, the words their mother would say and the things that they would say while they were combing their hair. And so, I'm a mother of four myself, and even though my girls are in their 20s, I still am careful about what I say about how they look, because speaking to your point about being a social justice issue, if there was a segment of the population that if they did not involve themselves in physical activity by the age of 50, they would die. Let's just say for hypothetical. In that scenario, I would imagine that there would be all types of public health reports, public health um, bulletins, banners, commercials, even advertisements about how important it is to be physically active, because if not, then this could kill you. And yet, we have Black women at the top of the list of most chronic diseases: high blood pressure, diabetes, many cancers, you name it. In fact, even maternal mortality. And we know that being involved in health, whether it's running, swimming, would help to get them into a pattern of a lifestyle. And so we cannot have a situation where we have young girls who have yet to become adults. Already their mind are framed around what it means to be beautiful, and that because of the standard of beauty, they can't be involved in physical activity. That is completely putting them on a path for many of those same chronic disorders. So that's really the work that I focus on, is helping young girls to really understand where their beauty comes from. And it's not about what's here, but it's more about what's in here.
What's in your heart, right? What's in your mind? What's in your heart?
That's right.
Right. And thank you so much for really, unpacking all of that, because I think it's so important to talk about the ways in which these things that we're addressing as adults are starting, in our childhood. They're starting at very early ages. And as I talk about all the time, that even before we leave the womb, as Black people are already deliberating and discussing our hair texture. Because our hair texture is unfortunately so central to our choices, our decisions that we're making, and so central to exercise or non-exercise of liberty, right? And our exercise or non-exercise of agency. I think about even your everything that you've described. Sorry to go a little bit off, but everything that you're describing is my childhood, right? In terms of being still and being fearful of being active. One of the worst scoldings I'll ever say I ever got was because my newly pressed curls and hair and curls, I messed up by hopping in the shower without a shower cap. Right. So you want to talk about, sorry, Mom, if you're listening. She'll say she didn't touch me. but but what you're experiencing, in so many ways, they are such common experiences amongst Black girls, that in women, starting at these really early ages, and how much our lives and our choices that can be negative as well as positive are revolving around our hair, and a lot of things that so many people don't know anything about, right? And therefore diminish the importance of our fight for hair justice and equality. And so, your point, in your work exploring all of these different dynamics, in the ways in which hair is shaping our choices, hair is impacting our health, and maybe leading to really chronic conditions like morbidity, obesity, high blood pressure, among other things that really are killing us. Right? It's a life and death matter. Can you tell us a bit how you have seen hair become a tool for reclaiming agency, identity, healthiness, and ultimately liberation?
Sure. One of the things that I'm seeing, especially now, is this a great time to observe these young girls as they're growing and just being a part of this natural hair movement and seeing that there's just so much diversity in ways that we can do our hair. And also, I'm so thankful for the Crown Act because now, because of the Crown Act, young girls that are living in the States, and I should say because we have an international global audience, in certain states, we have to acknowledge that there are still places in America where the Crown Act is not the law of the land. And so we have to be aware of that as well. But we're very thankful that they can grow up in a world, at least here in America, if you lived in that state, where they do have a legal recourse, where they can find a way to be politically engaged in that way. But I think that one of the things I'm seeing with young people, as we show a diversity in our hair, as we get involved in the different hair products that we can make ourselves, we're showing that love for ourselves. We're showing the self-acceptance. One of the outcomes of my dissertation was a after-school program for young girls to be able to find their identity. That after-school program has now spread to several schools, and they're able to fall in love with their hair and to not pass on that responsibility to necessarily a hairstylist, but to see that they themselves can do their hair. They can make their own hair products, that they can make their own hair shampoos and so on, and even have it as a business. And so I think there's so much that's come out of it, not just the cultural identity, but also the heritage. And I'm seeing that in that way, they can reclaim that type of agency because we cannot disregard the fact of the structural oppressive systems that have historically worked to control or erase the history of hair and the Black identity that has occurred from the times Africans set foot here in America. So I think it's important that we practice a sense of self-love, self-care, empowerment, education. But it's also important that we really, I think as adults, all of us that are here in this room, really communicate to young girls their beauty, their value, their worth, because the media completely works hard to erode that. And so they don't need another reason to feel that they're not beautiful. And so I think that those are things that they need to always have floating around in their head, this pride of who they are. And, I will just leave you with just the responsibility we have. We have to watch what we say, that there are, my family's from the Caribbean, and there's a saying that goes that the bushes have ears, which means that when we're saying or describing situations about our hair, we have to be aware of who's listening, who's in the room.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, absolutely. I think it's so critically important, all the things that you're talking about in terms of just knowing our hair and the power of that. Because again, so many of us as women, because we have started using different types of hair technologies for so long, even before we may even be able to recall it, maybe not because of our own choices, but because of the choices of elders, whether it be our mothers, our grandmothers, aunts, so forth, that we can go throughout our entire life without knowing this fundamental part of who we are, this fundamental part of our identities, not knowing our hair and how disempowering that can be. But I thank you so much for highlighting how empowering it can be, and also the ways in which we can do something personally, how we can change our mindsets and how we can change the words that we say to advance that empowerment, and how critically important policy can be, legislation like the Crown Act can be, to further that in. So thank you so much, Dr. Patty, for sharing all of those wonderful insights that led to your really critically important work, advocating on behalf of girls, especially as they're navigating their educational journey. And so I think we do.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And so I think we do have a couple of questions really quickly before we move to the next segment here. There's one. There are a couple students in the Zoom presentation from the AFM department at BCU. Yay. One student is going to medical school to be a dermatologist and would like advice and would like to hear about entering the field of medicine. In particular, I think this is for Dr. Osei-Tutu. And then also for, it looks like for Dr. Afia, are there other therapists who they might be able to talk to about psychotherapy? And then one last question about what are the 5 harmful chemicals in child relaxers? And I think this was for Dr. Charlene.
So Dr. Osei-Tutu, if you want to go first with the advice that you would give to anyone looking to enter the field of dermatology, you can start there.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, going to your local college or department or med school department of dermatology, meeting all the people there, and then trying to get yourself involved in some sort of research, going to your local chapter of NMA, National Medical Association. This is an association for Black physicians, and talking to the dermatology chapter over there. There's also an association called Nth Dimension, that will often pair students with mentors, and some of them being dermatologists. So yeah, lots of different ways. And then, always cold calling people. People call me all the time and ask me for advice or ask me to mentor. I'm not always necessarily available for mentor, but I'm always available to answer questions and direct people in the right direction.
Thank you, Dr. Osei-Tutu. Okay, so Dr. Afia, the question was, are there other therapists who they can talk to about psychotherapy?
Yes, there are other therapists that people can talk to about psychotherapy. So in terms of who has actually been certified in psychotherapy, I would almost say it's like maybe 60-40, 60% hair care professionals and about 40% therapists and educators. So I find that a lot of therapists actually want to increase their mental health and hair techniques because people are coming to them with these concerns. So just like there are directories for derm for people who specialize in hair, I'm hoping we can make a directory, now I'm inspired, for therapists that specialize in hair and as well. So, okay, well, you have to teach me how to do that, Dr. Osei-Tutu. I don't know how to make the directory. So now that's my homework. But there certainly are a lot of people. And although it hasn't happened yet, but this month I'll be doing a few continuing education classes through, what's it called, Alma, which is like a therapist directory that people are getting continuing education on hair-focused mental health interventions as well. So hopefully that will grow the number of practitioners using psychotherapy techniques.
Awesome. And then Dr. Charlene, I believe the last question was for you. What are the 5 harmful chemicals in child relaxers that people should be aware of?
Okay, so some of the compounds that are found in products. So for instance, you have your sulfates, and sulfates do impact children's scalp health as it relates to irritation and dryness. And they can also lead to cancerous effects as well. Formaldehyde is also another one. As well as endocrine disruptors. Your phthalates are also a really, really big one. You do also have your mineral oils, and some of the cationic surfactants are also related to harmful effects that are found in products as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Makita. All right, so we are going to continue. This has been so inspiring. I'm loving that even our panelists are inspired. This is amazing. This is wonderful. So we talked about the health impacts and we talked about some of the work, and a lot of things that came up was about media. We talked a lot about media, which is wonderful because we are now going to transition into the policy, legal, and advocacy solutions. And I want to bring up Michelle DeLeon, who is the visionary founder and CEO of World Afro Day, an award-winning global celebration established in 2017 to promote pride, education, and acceptance of Afro hair. And this movement has grown from an estimated reach of 1 billion, 1.5 billion, okay, across 6 continents. That is huge. So Michelle, you have this incredible background in media. Like we talked a lot about media's role, right? I'm a media professional also, so I definitely understand the power of media. And you have a deeply personal journey of your own hair journey and your daughter's, right? Which kind of sparked this movement. Can you talk to us a little bit? Can you bring us back to the moment of inspiration that made you start this worldwide movement? What was that was happening, and what is your vision, your larger vision that you're working towards for World Afro Day?
Thank you so much for having me. And it's really inspiring to be amongst all these passionate women who are committed. I know you're all committed, as I am, to actually seeing the change. And I think the key thing is generational change. We are grown women who have all been through stuff. And the reality is we have a chance to raise generations not to go through all the stuff that we're talking about today. And I was very intentional when it came to my daughter. I always wanted a girl, and I was intentional before I even got her that she would love her hair. And it is being intentional that I just didn't want her to go through anything. I didn't want her to have a moment of doubting that her hair had value, that it was beautiful, that I would spend time in it. I just remember even, having on her favorite movies when I did her hair. I didn't want her to, I don't know about you, but I've been to salons where I've heard children screaming at the top of their voices for what's being done to them. And I just never wanted her to experience anything negative. So I just, I really bought books for her, videos for her, spent time with her, bought beads that she would just feel so much joy in her hair. And one morning I was in my bedroom, she was in the bathroom, and she was singing. She was singing. She loves her Afro hair. She said, I'm a princess and I praise God that I have Afro hair. And I was like, wow, am I hearing my daughter? I just feel that she reached this pinnacle at 8 years old. And I was like, how did she get there? But as wonderful as that moment was, I just thought about, I wanted her to be in a generation like that. Millions of children, can you imagine millions of our children singing about the joy of Afro hair? I still have that dream of things, millions of children singing about the joy of having Afro hair. And so I thought, my second thought after the millions of children I wanted to see, as I thought about my sisters, I thought about Black women, I thought, we're not experiencing this joy. We're struggling. We're still struggling with our hair. So I had these two groups really in my mind. And I thought about, well, if we're sharing all the negative, why can't we come together and share the positive? We've got the internet now. I just thought, let's have a day where we can start celebrating our hair. And it really was that one thought, can we have a day to celebrate our hair? And I just knew that the day had to have significance. It couldn't be a random day. Oh, I just chose Tuesday, the 7th of February. I knew I wanted it to have a real significance. So I spent some time thinking about what day could mean something to all of us. And in America in September 2016, there was the act passed in Alabama to ban dreadlocks in the employment and to stop people getting promotion if you had dreadlocks. That still exists in America. the Crown Act has come, but that law saying an employer can stop you having a job and stop you getting promoted if you wear dreadlocks still exists in Alabama. And that was passed on September 15th. So I said, that is the date where I am having World Afro Day. Will take that date so we can tell the whole world that there are laws against us having the hair that we're born with. And I just felt that law was so outrageous that I wanted it to be marked and turn it around, I suppose, turn the negative into a positive with World Afro Day.
Woo, I love it. I love it. The intention, right? And having an idea and a vision for what you want to do, and also focusing on the positive, because we can talk about, like you said, the negative all day, but what are the positives? Because there are many positives, and sometimes when you focus on the negative, it's you feel helpless and hopeless. But I'm just picturing your little girl singing this Afro song, and I know you have a big hair assembly, right? So I can imagine girls all over in school singing this maybe there should be a World Afro Day national anthem or something that we all can sing.
Natasha, don't get me started. My dream is to have a song that goes with the day.
Yes. Okay. Well,
any producers out there, producers and songwriters,
get in the chat. Let us know. I think that'll be awesome. So, I know that you have, so that was 2017, but I'm just really amazed at all of the things that you have been able to accomplish within this short amount of time with World Afro Day. You have worked on reports, you have this big hair assembly, you are creating workshops and training for folks in the UK, corporate trainings, corporate accountability. Can you tell us, and these huge campaigns, right? I want to go back to the advocacy part of it, because it wasn't just enough for you to say, okay, we're going to celebrate this day. You realize that there are some legislative actions that need to be taken. And so you have done that. You have talked with Parliament. You have talked with the UN. So this is not your first rodeo with the UN. You have really been the leading voice around hair discrimination across the world. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the groundbreaking study, the hair equality report and the workplace hair acceptance report. What made you move to take this research-based approach? And when was the moment that you realized that data and evidence would be essential to creating the systemic change that we're looking for?
Evidence was crucial because, to be honest, the things that we suffer with for hundreds of years gets ignored. And if you want systemic change, you need to have evidence. It's just as simple as that, because otherwise it's all anecdotal, and they get used to us hearing us complain, hearing our pain and not acting. Unless you have the evidence that this is happening and there is a consequence. So when you want to deal with systemic change, you've got to create evidence so that it's concrete. It's not just about our feelings and our opinions. It's about the evidence that says this is happening and these are the consequences. So research, I suppose, even before the research, I'll bring in Professor Wendy. The first thing I wanted to do is elevate the awareness to a very high level. And initially I did that by involving professors from day one. Professor Wendy came over, and 3 professors came over. Professor Wendy, excuse me, I'm forgetting everybody's names. But I had to position World Afro Day as the highest of the highest importance. And that had not happened before, which is why I was very intentional about involving professors. And the next step was the research, because we know we've suffered for 400 years. So if we want to see some change, we had to position it in a way that they would have to take notice that it was a serious issue. And that's what professors and academic research do. That's what it does, that it just says this is a serious issue of a certain level, so that they have to pay attention. I suppose that maybe that's my journalism background, that I knew that was important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, every time I've seen it, I was like, wow, she's at Parliament. She's like really taking this discussion to the folks. And the media coverage around it, it's just, I mean, it's been really inspiring. And so I just want to thank you for, taking your time. And it takes a lot of energy to be an advocate. Let me just say that for folks who are not sure what this type of work is like, right? I see Guylaine is smiling. I'm coming to you next because we're going to talk about all of the like what it really actually takes to get a movement started, right? You have the spark, but then you need a team. I know it's not just you. I know Dr. Charlene is one of the volunteers. You said, you got Professor Wendy to come on board and other advocates. So can you talk to us about some of the key changes that you'd like to see institutions make when it comes to ensuring true hair equality? Yeah.
I think I got to the stage where we'd kind of done public awareness, we've done schools, we've done the workplace, but I knew that the legislation, the legal change has to be the foundation. That's the foundation of society. Everything that society values has a law attached to it. That's the bottom line. So it was like, okay, we're going to have to take it to the next level with the law and but also what influences because the Parliament thing is it's a whole beast in itself. It's a whole specific environment, lobbying. I didn't know about lobbying and all this, but also it's report writing, submitting evidence. Again, Parliament, we've submitted 2 bits of evidence this year, which was to the business committee and then to the science and innovation committee, because but I've learned through doing that, because if you think about it, I was thinking about it on the way today, education, health and employment are in the top 5 of every government in the world, and that affects us. So we've got to start taking it as serious as that. Those are the priorities of all governments: education, employment, health. And our hair influences all of those areas. So if we start understanding these are such important issues, then we can start to speak to them about that, because we need to understand, because governments make those a priority and we are citizens of these countries. So we can start talking to them. But if you care about our education, you care about our health, you care about employment, then you need to address our hair inequality.
That's right. That is right. And thank you for highlighting that intersection, because sometimes when we talk about beauty, people think that we're talking about the aesthetics. We're talking about, looks. We're talking about something that is very surface level. But as you can see on this conversation, we are really talking about all of the layers. We're talking about all of the foundations of our health and our psychological health, our emotional health, our physical health. It is all connected. So natural hair is the gateway, but we're really talking about the foundations of ourselves. So thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing all of the work that you're doing. And if anyone in the chat, like she said, song producers, we're looking to get this song going. So tell somebody. Now I'm going to bring.
Before I leave, Natasha, I just want
yes.
The other thing was you said, well, where's the future? What's the future?
Yes, please. Yeah.
And I really think it is global collaboration. And the reason why I say that is because this is our universal language. It doesn't matter which country we're in. Our hair is the most universal language, because every country, in terms of skin, it has different ways in which they deal with us. But our hair, we're having the same experiences in every country. The barriers are the same in every country. So we have this universal language, but also we are the biggest spenders in the world. We are the biggest spenders in every country. So we are the biggest spenders in the world. So there must be a way for us to pull that resource together to make the change that we want to see.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we had this conversation today with the United Nations on this event, because it is a global conversation, right? And working together is something that we definitely believe in. So we are going to bounce from the UK. Now we're bouncing over to France with Guylaine Conquête. Guylaine, thank you for being here. Your personal journey with your hair inspired, yes, yes, it inspired a movement that led to the introduction of a national bill in France, right? That would ban discrimination on the basis of hair texture, hairstyle, and hair color. And March 28th marked the 1 year anniversary of the historic hair discrimination law passed by the National Assembly in the French Parliament. And now the bill awaits approval, right? How did your art and activism intersect to create this type of impact?
Yes. Thank you for having me, Natasha. Thank you, Professor Green. Thank you for all of you. Just before I answer your question, I just wanted to tell you that I'm truly honored to be a part of this important discussion. And I want to take a moment because I've been hearing your stories. I've been hearing your involvement. I don't know if you can say that in English, but that's incredible. You are incredible. And I would like to thank you all for us, but for the future generation. So can we just, yeah. Thank you. So yes, I decided, Natasha, to dedicate my work, my artwork, around my hair identity. I heard that Professor talk about the childhood, and Dr. Patty, that started there for me. You know, I grew up in France. I grew up in Lyon, and I was the only Black girl in the class. And of course, I felt that I was different. Of course, I felt embarrassed with my hair because I wasn't looking like everybody else. So my dream was to have straightened hair. My dream was to have silky hair. You know, when you're running, you know, your hair doing like this, you know, I wanted my hair to do that like this. I wanted to, when I was writing, I wanted to do, you know, so that was my dream. And I just hated my hair. So I went through hate, rejection of my natural hair. And of course, you know, your parents doesn't help with that sometimes. Sorry, mommy, but that's true. And then after I went through acceptance because I was a journalist and being on television was a big, how do you say that? When you have to, you know, appear presentable, because I've always learned, and people always told me that to be presentable, to be professional, I had to have straightened hair. So my transition was a big part of my activism, because I understood that I had to stop chemicals because I had a severe hair loss, and I had to be me. I had to appear on television with my natural hair, and which was a big thing for me. And now, Dr. Afia, we're talking about psychotherapy, and that was a traumatic moment for me to appear like this on television with my natural hair. And I went through this. It was for me really a moment of acceptance when I start to question myself and try to understand where this dislike for natural hair come from. So fast forward, when I moved to US 7 years ago, I started to, dig a little bit, question myself on my hair identity, why, and I found out about the Crown Act. And I say, hey, yeah, there's a bill here in US, to fight for hair discrimination. And I read the story, and I read my history, back to Africa, when our ancestors, they were wearing proudly their hair. Hair was identity. And I learned that hair was not only aesthetic, like you were saying, Natasha. Hair is health. Hair is economic. Hair is identity. Hair is politic. So when 2022, heard this story of this hair flight attendant, I was looking for searching for his name. His flight attendant, he was fired by the big company Air France because of his dreadlocks, because of his hairstyle. This poor guy, can you imagine, has to wear a wig for 9 years. 9 years. And I said, this is not possible. We're in 2022. How can you cut somebody's identity like this? How can a man have to wear a wig to go to work? This is not normal. So I decided to take action because a lot of people, they do their thing, they're not happy about what's happening, but they don't take action. I decided to take action, and I decided to call a PR, Mr. Olivier Servat, and I said to Mr. Servat, we have to do something. We have to step up. We have to bring a law at the French Congress about hair discrimination in workplace. And Mr. Servat, of course, made fun of me. He didn't like it. He didn't like it. He didn't understand. And then I spoke to Natasha. Thank you, Natasha Gaspard, who introduced me to Professor Green. Thank you to Professor Green. So, and Professor Green helped us in France with Mr. Servat's team, Lovely Bergina, who wrote the bill. And it was a team effort. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's not a US issue. It's a global issue. It's an international problem. So thank you for bringing, girls, for Natasha and Professor Green, for help me, to make this happen. And as you said, Natasha, March last year made 1 year. It was historical. It was historical because that was the first time a bill was, bring at this level. So regarding my art, I told you I was feeling very bad, and art has the power to heal. I needed to heal from my trauma. So I decided to paint my natural hair journey. I decided to tell my story. It's not my story, it was all the little girl story around the world. So I decided to do exhibition. And when I started to tell this story, I realized that, hey, but this is a lot of Black people, Black women like me stories. So I started to do my exhibition, working at school, doing conferences around this topic. So I really embrace now this fight for hair discrimination.
Yelene, you are amazing. I love speaking with you. I love talking about you. And your story is so inspiring of, first of all, just moving from journalism to art, right? And just being like, you know what, I'm going to paint natural hair because that's what I like.
Yeah.
That's what I love. And I'm going to do that. Yeah. And that's amazing. And you have done it, and you are successful, and you're teaching young folks in school to really express themselves through art, right? You're an artist activist, and I love that. And I know we're running a little bit low on time. I know I wanted to ask you about the other work that you're doing, because Guylaine didn't just stop there with introducing legislation in France. She is also now looking to affect the health outcomes, right, of Black women and girls. We're talking about the harmful chemical products. So reaching out to France's consumer reporting type of agency to really look into these chemicals that are being marketed to us, and then also seeing if they can ban these harmful chemicals in France as well. So I just wanted to just mention that and thank you for that work, because you could have just stopped where you were, because you're just doing all the things with France and that's still happening. But then you're like, no, this is important too. Let me do that. Yeah.
Quickly, we're still waiting for the Congress, because we haven't finished yet for the hair discrimination bill. We're waiting for the Senate. We're still working on it, but the French president, Mr. Macron, he dissolved the French Congress last year, so it took some delay. I don't know how you say that. He dissolved the French Congress, the French Assembly last year, so everything had been delayed. So we're working on it for this year, hopefully. I spoke to the Congressman, Mr. Servat. He told me that we're working on it. And regarding the Consumer Safety Agency, we have in France the 60 millions consommateurs, which is like the Consumer Report in America. So I asked them to conduct an analysis on the chemical composition of synthetic hair. So I still don't have any answer yet. I don't have any response yet, but why I decided to use the French report, because French tend to tell us that we always rely on study, copying what happened in America, in UK. But for me, the hair synthetic chemical is the same. Is the same hair that's selling all over the world. So for me, it's really crucial to conduct this study for us to have our also our result that we can show people, we can show the public that yes, they arm us with their product. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you, Guylaine. Thank you so much. And I just want to bring it to Professor Wendy, because you are sort of like the glue in all of this a little bit, right? When it comes to legislation. And so you've played a key role in helping other countries shape their own laws against hair discrimination. So how do these laws differ across borders? You know, we heard the fact that, you know, Guylaine said France is like, why are you using America stuff? And then you have the UK and they need theirs. And it's like, but it's all the same. It's all the same. Even though we live on different parts of this planet, our experiences, especially when it comes to our hair, are shared. So tell us about how the laws are different across the borders, and then what's the current status of the Federal Crown Act if we have a little time.
No, I'm going to talk really, really quickly.
Okay.
Yes, but that being said, I just wanted to just point out some of the things that I hope people are connecting the dots in terms of all of these lived experiences that we're talking about, that we're able to compile just even in the 90 minutes that we have together today, are connective tissue. Because they're lived experiences. And I like to think about lived experiences as expertise, as that evidence that is needed to be able to support legislation, regardless of legislation and policy and change, regardless of where you are in the world. And it also tells you about the systemic. It actually really helps to illuminate to the naysayers or to the opponents the systematic nature of this kind of discrimination and its harms and the way it is impacting us in all of these different areas of our lives, right? So I use, comparative evidence from other countries in the work that I am doing to explain that when we are addressing race-based natural hair discrimination in the United States, at the same time, we are addressing an issue that may be happening in Ghana, may be happening in South Africa, in the UK, in France. I'm reading now Panama, in Puerto Rico. The list can go on and on and on. And so I hope that people are feeling empowered by all of these stories that are being shared today and using them as not only just simply lived experience, but as expertise to support our advocacy efforts. That being said, one of the main differences with respect to the legislation in the United States that's popularly known as Crown Acts, or Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act, is that in our system, very much like in the UK with the Equality Act, we have protected classifications in our anti-discrimination law or civil rights laws. And one in particular is race, that our civil rights laws prohibit discrimination explicitly on the basis of race. But what many people don't understand is that key term is not defined, usually in our legislation. So back in 2008, when I published an article, I put forth a definition that I hoped that lawmakers and lawyers and other advocates would likely use as it was informing their advancement of actionable civil rights legislation that would protect against race-based natural hair discrimination. And Michelle actually mentioned in her commentary one of those cases from 2016, 2017, where we were trying to, and I was involved in that case. I filed an amicus brief in that case, and the legal arguments that I made in that 2008 article informed the litigation strategy of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And one of the things is they wanted courts, federal courts in particular, as they were interpreting Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, was to understand that racial discrimination embodies discrimination, not simply on the basis of our skin complexion, but also on the basis of characteristics that are associated with our racial identity. And so in light of that, that case that rejected that argument, unfortunately, and created a hair-splitting legal distinction that I call it, that basically federal law meaning Title VII only protects against discrimination on the basis of immutable characteristics. or how they describe it, characteristics that you're born with or that you cannot change. And under that idea, basically, Title VII only covers discrimination on the basis of skin complexion, or in the case of Black workers, on the basis of our afros. But if you lock, braid, or twist your afro, then magically it's not about race, and therefore there is no protection under our civil rights statutes, which is crazy, right? So this is how the Crown Act comes to be. It's because of that longstanding jurisprudence that narrows our protections against racial discrimination in particular. And so now the Crown Acts have a clarifying definition of race, one that is being informed by my scholarship. And depending on the particular jurisdictions, it will say that race constitutes characteristics or traits that are either historically or commonly or just simply associated with race, like locks, braids, twists, Bantu knots, and so forth. And so for the first time, we have a clarifying definition of race in our civil rights legislation in the United States. And similarly, that is what Michelle is advancing in the UK as it relates to the Equality Act, and hoping that the Equality Act will likewise amend or be amended to really be clear that discrimination on the basis of hair textures and hairstyles that are associated with racial and cultural identity amounts to unlawful racial discrimination. Now, France is a bit different, and I'll say this in a second. France is different in that regard because France has adopted a colorblind theory of policy. And what that means is that race is not an actionable or cognizable concept that we can use on the face of legislation. In other words, there's no express protection against racial discrimination in France. And as long as that, that colorblind ideology is at play, there will not be. However, what is critically important is that the French legislation prohibits, for the first time, if passed, it would prohibit discrimination on the basis of hair texture, hair color, and hairstyles. And it's also critically important, and lastly, I'll say about that is that even though it doesn't state that it is racial discrimination, and even though it doesn't state that, what is so critically important, and very much like the legislation in the US and in the UK and other types of legal interventions around the world, is that it is clearly shaped by the experiences of African descendants. Our experiences with this kind of bias and stereotyping and resulting discrimination and its harms are front and center. Our voices are being heard. And I come to tears thinking about the ways in which African descendants in France were able to speak to their issues as it relates to natural hair discrimination in a variety of sectors at the French Parliament, probably for the first time, really hearing our voices and our experiences to shape legislation and policy, maybe since the abolition of slavery, to be frank. And so it's really quite powerful that our experiences are front and center in shaping this legislation, not only in the United States, but in the UK, as well as in France and so many other places around the world.
My goodness. Thank you, Wendy. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to hold down the emotions, but it's I'm really feeling it. I'm just really happy that we are all here in this space together. We're all calling in from different parts of the world, and the chat, the Q&A is popping. So thank you everyone who is on this call. This event was really meant to inspire folks to understand that although we hear a lot of things having to do with hair discrimination, there are people on the ground doing the work, and it comes from within, right? All of us, we all shared a little piece of our story of how we were personally impacted, and therefore that sparked a movement, if you will. And now that we are together, we're even stronger, right? And so if you're in this chat, you have found your tribe. I'm sure I know there are so many more people that are out there doing work as well. And the internet and things like platforms like Zoom and everything are bringing us together platforms like the United Nations and having this permanent forum is critically important. And they're going to be using the suggestions that we have on this Zoom to really inform policies going forward. So this is really one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this to United Nations as well. I just wanted to just read one comment that's in the chat, and then I will connect her with Michelle DeLeon. So it's Dr. Nicole Jenkins. She says, I'm a researcher and professor at Howard University and Harvard University. I am conducting research globally on Black women's experiences wearing natural hair. Speaking to Michelle DeLeon's call for global collaboration and the need for more data, what exactly is needed from researchers? I would love to connect with any and all of you. This is incredible. I have her email address and I will share it with the group since I have everyone's email address, but just know that there are people who are, again, are doing this work all over the country. And this is a call out for more of us to connect and work with each other. Just like Michelle said, right? The global collaboration is going to be the next step in this. So I think we've come to the end of our program. It kind of went fast, right? But it was very full of information and inspiration, which is exactly what the intention was. So Wendy, do you want to close out the closing remarks and thanking of our sponsors, and then we'll say goodbye to everyone in the chat.
Well, thank you so much again, everyone. This has been such an enriching, educational, and empowering program examining the multidimensionality of hair discrimination affecting African descendant women and girls and its harms. We hope that those of you who are able to join with us this afternoon, this evening, early morning, depending on where you are in the world, that you come away better informed and armed with education that will hopefully inspire you to agitate and advocate on behalf of legislation, policies, personal, collective change aimed at improving our hair health and our overall well-being. I also want to put out a call to action here, in alignment with what has already been said in terms of realizing how important these global connections are and these global collaborations are to bring about transformative change, not only in our respective countries, but around the world on behalf of African descendants. And before we close, we would also like to extend our gratitude to the organizations that have co-sponsored this program in conjunction with the United Nations fourth session of the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. And again, that will be held, if you are in New York, it will be held next week at the UN headquarters. And the sponsoring organizations are Grow with Intent and Natural Aura. Thanks to Dr. Charlene. Also Just Afro, thanks to Guylaine Conquet. Free the Hair, hashtag Free the Hair. I guess thanks to me. No, just kidding. Hashtag Free the Hair. Vital Signs, which is a critical part of our health law policy program at Drexel University Klein School of Law, as well as Main Moves Media, thanks to Natasha Gaspar. And last but not least, the Center for Law, Policy, and Social Action, housed at Drexel University Klein School of Law, where I have the privilege of serving as its director. We again thank you all so much for this really important and empowering conversation. And we look forward to not only continuing the conversation, but continuing the collaborations for change for everyone of African descent. Free the hair.
Free the hair. Thank you, everyone. Have a great, great day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.